Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. I'm your host, Marty Bennett, and this week on the Roundup, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most important questions we in international admissions should be asking ourselves here in the United States. And what we're going to be talking about today are some things that might surprise you, and certainly I think as we go through today, we're going to see a lot of what we're talking about today has ramifications down the line for what we do as institutions. And I really encourage you all to take time this week to go back to your leadership on campus and discuss some of what we're going to be talking about today, because these are some of the vital questions I think that we all need to be asking ourselves about international education and our future as a country, as institutions, as international admissions offices, how you are going to be moving forward. Because the way we've been doing things, business as usual is no longer going to cut it. There needs to be a completely new rethink, and a new mindset that we all take as international admissions experts here in the United States to really take a look at where we're going as an industry. Are we viable in our current state? And for a lot of colleges and universities, the answer is going to be no. And what we'll do today over the next half hour or so is discuss some of these important questions that we need to be asking ourselves. For those of you that are new to the Midweek Roundup, this is our attempt Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern to get in front of you and discuss some of the key issues of the day that we found in our news feeds over the last few days. It's hard not to be thinking about the impact COVID-19 is having on our campuses right now. We're going to talk about that certainly and what we can potentially do about that. But first off, we want to refer new visitors to the Roundup to a couple of resources. One of which is our SMIE Consulting e-newsletter that comes out Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern. And this is our attempt to give a roundup of the top international ed news stories and top social media stories that can be applied to what we do in international admissions. So that's free of charge. A subscribe button on the smieconsulting.org/subscribe page will get you that information. And we picked three of the stories that are in the e-newsletter called All the SMIE News Fit to Share, and we profile those here on the Roundup. In the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've been dividing up the topics in the international ed section to some of the key areas I think that are common themes we're seeing each week, one of which is what's the government doing or not doing. We talk about what some of the solutions are out there. We'll talk about a couple of those here today. And we also talk about what other countries are doing to respond to this pandemic and how it's going to impact their day-to-day. And we also pose some positive news where we can. Find those stories every once in a while, and some of what we'll talk about today is really on that positive side. But I really appreciate all of you who are watching live on Facebook, but also those watching on repeat on Facebook or YouTube channel, and especially to my podcast audience, the growing number of folks who are subscribing to our podcast feed on iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Thank you for adding us to your rotation. And so let's get to it. First question up this week: what would suspending OPT mean for international education? And this, for those that are new to international ed or international admission circles, certainly anyone who's been an international student advisor on a college campus knows what we're talking about here. OPT, optional practical training, that gives international students that work experience after they're done with their degrees, is vital to our continued success as a destination for international students that attracts the best and the brightest from around the world. There's that track record that exists. There's the quality institutions that have been bringing students to our shores for decades. But a recent statement by Tom Cotton, a senator, Republican senator, has raised a lot of red flags, and there seem to be others that are coming to his cause on the GOP side, which is arguing in favor of a suspension of OPT for international students, along with some other restrictions on H-1B, all in the guise of, well, we don't want to be giving Americans who've been pushed out of work opportunities to come, opportunities to get jobs when things start reopening. And this is sort of it's a false flag as far as I'm concerned, because when you look at the kinds of people that they're targeting, university educated, oftentimes master's and doctoral level students that graduate, that have OPT or STEM OPT opportunities, the jobs that they are taking, frankly, there aren't the U.S. citizens that are able to take those jobs. And frankly, the ones that have been most directly impacted with COVID-19 in terms of losing their jobs have been primarily service sector folks that have not been able to, because of their jobs have basically been shut down, whether it's on food service or if it's on retail side. Frontline folks have lost their jobs or have been furloughed or are on PPP right now if they're working for small businesses. Those aren't international students are not the ones in top-level jobs that require bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees aren't the ones that are going to be would be impacted, are impacting opportunities for Americans to take their jobs. This, frankly, is just a false flag, and it's a misdirection as far as I'm concerned, and plays into the anti-immigrant rhetoric that has been so much a reality that this current administration has been pushing out for the last 3 years. And it's a real shame, frankly, that we've come to this point, that this is coming up, and it's kind of red meat for the base of current administration's attempts at re-election, and it doesn't tick any of the boxes. And for those that actually study the subject and know the job market and know where the deficits are, frankly, the deficits in STEM education in particular in the U.S. that would be producing potential American citizens and permanent residents to take these jobs, they're just not coming through in the volume necessary to keep the tech firms moving forward, to keep startups that are looking to employ quality students, quality graduates in those fields. That just doesn't exist. So it's probably, and I'm almost assured that this is nothing more than a red flag and just generating interest, because frankly I can't see certainly the House or the majority of senators, other than those that are kind of jumping on board with this initial proposal, once reality hits, and as long as Stephen Miller doesn't get into the mix here and answering or making any proposals along this line, this is a time, frankly, when this particular proposal should go away as quickly as it entered the picture, because would truly be a devastating blow for what we do in international education for those that are looking to come to the United States, and it's something that frankly we can't afford to do at this point. We're damaging our reputation already over the last 4 years with the rhetoric that's come out. Other countries have upped their game, have made it much easier for students to apply to those countries, and we are putting our country at a competitive disadvantage for receiving these students, receiving the talent that they bring from abroad to our college campuses, and the amazing impact who they are, where they're from, has on our current students, on our domestic students, and how it raises the level of discourse about our world, about our future, to a point where we all see the true value in what we're doing, and that we are better together than apart. And that goes not just for America and citizens here, but the rest of the world. We are better together. We solve problems better when we're together. And our institutions of higher education for decades have been a place where those conversations can begin and then hopefully spread into our communities, that are those students that do go back home, take that message of the real strength of what America is back to their countries and become our friends in the future. So it's a real challenge, and certainly a time that this is like one more thing we do not need to have on the table right now. But it's a reality that hopefully it's a short-term thing that will be passing soon once once the rhetoric dies down and the realities on the ground of the employment situation. Certainly, yeah, that are going to be in the next month. They're saying we could be up to 20% unemployment in the United States, but the kinds of jobs that people have lost are not the kinds of jobs that these international students would be filling. So that's really the misdirect of this whole proposal that just needs to be taken off the table as quickly as possible before it sees the light of day with legislation. Now, let's talk about what higher ed needs to be doing. And we look at what's going on in higher education over the last few years. We look at what happened after 2008, when the Great Recession happened, when the last time we saw millions more unemployed, not nearly what we have now, but we saw an economy that was depressed. There were a lot of weak points in the economy that needed bolstering. But for higher ed, it came at a time, yes, state budgets were being cut, but it came at a time when there was a domestic bulge in the graduating high school population that we're coming to the end of right now. And that allowed a lot of universities to pursue more out-of-state students on the state level side, but also to pursue more international students to help fill their coffers at the university level. And that has become under threat. So we're in a double or if not triple whammy right now. You're coming to the end of that domestic bubble that's about to burst for domestic students graduating high school. You're coming to a situation with international students where the ground has become increasingly competitive and crowded for other countries that are taking market share away from the U.S. For international students that could have previously come here are going elsewhere. And you also have the current impact of the pandemic. So we're in a position now as a country where, and this article that I've just posted the link to in University World News is from one of the sages in international higher ed, and that's John Hudzik, formerly of Michigan State. John is someone that I have tremendous respect for, and he has been on the front lines of this and actually has been an advocate for exactly what he writes about in this article about the need for higher ed to become disruptive. Not disrupted, we are disrupted. We need to become disruptive. And that means changing the status quo. In terms of how John approaches this message of what institutions need to do to be disruptive, not disrupted, is casting aside, frankly, the old ways of doing things because they're not going to work in the future. And that was where I was coming from the top here in terms of this kind of tipping point we're at in international higher ed and higher ed in general with the various challenges that we're facing, whether it be the online switch that every institution had to make mid-semester this year or midterm this year, to what the expectations are going to be in the fall for international students who are likely not going to be able to get their visas in time to get to the United States because travel restrictions may still be in place. There may be quarantine implications for new students when they come in. How are those going to be handled? There's a whole milieu of things that universities are grappling with right now. What are schools that are dependent on their athletic programs going to do when they can't have students or people at their games for football in the fall? There's so much happening here at once that some people's heads are starting to explode with just the sheer pressure that they're feeling right now in terms of what the implications are going to be for their institutions. And frankly, from the outside looking in, I'm certainly glad I'm on the consulting side right now and not on campus, but oftentimes it's important to be able to take a step back, and John does a great job of it in this article and talking through some of the key things that institutions need to be thinking about. That there are more cost-effective and flexible models of mobility for students, short, long-term internships, not for credit, that faculty and students have been asking for a number of years, but haven't the supply of available courses like that have not been there. That there are opportunities regarding internationalizing the curriculum that are going to require new approaches, new pedagogies. That they're active learning models, innovative use of technology, and some of that's been tested in this spring term. But the changes that we're talking about that are going to be needed are not just minor fixes here and there. They're not just Band-Aid approaches. It really needs to be a comprehensive rethink of how we do what we do. And when we talk about internationalization, it's really about where we're coming from as a country, where we're coming from as institutions, and our mindsets towards the world and to what we do. There have been resurgence of nationalistic models of government across Europe, in the United States. Obviously, we're into that right now, and other countries as well, Brazil, that are challenging the kind of what internationalization is. But the realities are, it's what is going to sustain us through this. Isolationism is something that's tried and failed many times throughout history. And what we are better when we're together, working together as a world to solve our various problems. And it requires what John's talking about in this disruptive approach to internationalization and higher education. Is it just requires so much more focus on who we are as institutions, how committed we are to truly innovate and test those new ideas. Rather than just do the tried and true, because that's what's gotten us through. And that's clearly not going to work anymore. And let's talk about what that looks like. What is a truly disruptive kind of an approach to internationalization, international higher education? And I want to give a big shout out to the folks at University of Arizona. And this is something that they've been working on for a number of years, and that's frankly what it takes to be truly disruptive and come together with a plan that can supersede international boundaries, that can truly deliver on institutional promises. And this is University of Arizona's global campus. It's been years in the making. It now offers 10 customized degree paths to more than 200 undergraduate majors, 10 graduate certificates, 60 fully online degrees at both the undergraduate and graduate levels in more than 130 cities and countries across the globe. There are over 2,200 unique courses that are offered through Global Campus, that they have 40 fully online undergrad degrees, 20 fully online grad programs, that have residential locations in 58 places around the world through partner universities and others. They have put this together, and it's really an opportunity that their goal of sustainable development goal of providing accessible quality education to the world. It's in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Projects. The University of Arizona has really taken the opportunity to put together pieces that they've been developing over the years, particularly with partner universities that they might have already had exchange partnerships with, to serve as residential facilities for students who wanted a UA degree, that are able to have that on-campus classes, access to in-person academic support, partner school computer labs, all of that. And this is really, I think, a step forward that other institutions who may already have strengths in some areas, maybe with online learning, maybe with the partner universities, maybe in a combination of 2 or 3 more areas, can really provide a way forward for your institution to maintain its international presence in terms of students who still can come here or may come here for portions of their degree. Might not be all 4 years on campus anymore for an undergraduate. Maybe that's too much to ask anymore. It may be doing the 1+1 master's programs, or 2+2 or 3+1, 3+2 bachelor's and master's programs with partner institutions. These are the kind of mixes that provide a tapestry or a myriad of opportunities for your prospective students to really jump into and see you as a realistic option for them, and provide flexible options for them. And that's something that you don't see everywhere. And that is what will distinguish places like University of Arizona that do think outside the box. So I think this is really something, when we look at ways institutions can be disruptive rather than disrupted by what's happening in the world, that you take opportunities like this to piece together beyond the standard 4-year bachelor's, 2-year master's, 5-year doctoral degree programs that you've been offering, through the certificate programs that you have that may have great value overseas. You've never marketed them overseas, but you maybe offer them remotely. You maybe offer them in partnership with a university overseas that you have an existing relationship with. And it's never been more important than now to have, develop, and nurture your relationships with partner universities. And because everybody around the world is going to be struggling with these issues right now, where there's going to be issues related to access to your campus from students from abroad. There's going to be issues to funding, to how immigration will figure into the mix. There's so many different levels to this that unless you're thinking strategically and on a long-term basis, you're never going to get to where University of Arizona is right now with their global campus. So kudos to them. And another example of that, they have one of their partners is OP Jindal Global University in India, and they give Indian students the opportunity to earn a U.S. degree without leaving their home country. And this is something that is obviously Jindal is a partner university for University of Arizona, and they have put together. I've just dropped the link to those 2 stories in the comments section on the Facebook page. But those that's the example of what a truly disruptive institution can do in international ed circles, and draw the kind of expand the range of places that it really has an impact in the world, and develop the kind of resources that make it a much more dynamic, a much more nimble, and a much more flexible kind of campus that makes it much more attractive, I think, to prospective students. So kudos to Arizona for putting together something that is groundbreaking. They're not the only institution doing that, but they're an example of what more schools need to be doing if they're going to survive this intact and even thrive after this pandemic passes. Now let's shift gears for our last topic of the day to talk about what international students need to see from institutions in order to be able to enroll. And this is coming out of an IDP Connect survey that was student survey that was released last week, and it has almost 7,000 students that were impacted, that were surveyed through this mechanism. That of that 69% of this nearly 7,000 students, only 5% are no longer expecting to begin their studies, that have given up on their dream of studying abroad. Not necessarily just in the U.S. This is 6,900 students that were looking at primarily English destinations: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, and the U.S. And it was obviously given out, a survey that was given as a result of COVID-19, and looking at their view on what their graduation, perceptions of safety, and their views of online versus face-to-face delivery for their education. And what the conclusions of the survey said that nearly 70% of these students still expected to commence their studies as planned. So that's the good news. The bad news is 30% aren't. 25% might be looking to defer. Another 25% or another 5%, as we talked about, are no longer pursuing their overseas study dreams. And so there's going to be a loss. We're all going to feel a loss this fall. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We are all going to see decreased international students. And I'm putting the link to the press release from IDP Connect that outlines kind of the top level things. And it also provides a link to a very an important, I think, view. It's a kind of an infographic that they put together that talks about where students are what they're looking for. That why when they asked about regarding online delivery, one of the takeaways from this is that those that were asked regarding online delivery said that they would defer entry if that was the only option for them. Another 31%, so again, this is 69% that were saying, or actually it's all 7,000, that were nearly 7,000 that were surveyed. 38% said they're going to defer until they can get face-to-face. Another 31% said we'll go online, but with the expectation that we're going to transition to face-to-face, so maybe after a semester or so. Another 17% were undecided, and 10% were fine with doing just online. But I don't think any of us would be happy, or our institutions certainly wouldn't be happy if we only had online, new international students being online in the fall. So that's the kind of the lay of the land in terms of where these students were coming from. For those that were looking at master's and doctoral programs, they were much more likely to defer entry. Nearly half said that they would defer entry in order to have face-to-face study. Another quarter or so would go online, but with the expectation to transition to face-to-face. Another 10-15% are undecided, and a very small percent, probably less than 7-8%, would go with online only. Undergraduates, less are certainly they are willing to probably play the long game here, do that online semester, and I think it was about nearly 40%. We're looking to do online. That's where at least the greatest single number of students, about 41%, would do online first, but with the expectation to transition to face-to-face. Another 20% would defer until they could have face-to-face. And the rest were undecided or would prefer online. So there's a lot of issues here. And another piece that we'll talk about next week is about how you're communicating to your prospective students, the ones that are your admitted students that are in the pipeline, you're hoping to get on campus in the fall. How are you communicating to them about the fall? Are you saying, it's our fault, we don't know what we're going to do yet, but we hope to be on campus in the fall? Or are you just saying, we don't know yet, we'll tell you later? What's your approach? And we'll talk about it next week more in depth about what it means to be a university in COVID-19 times, and how being student first has never been more important than right now, and how well you're able to translate your university mission and who you are as an international admissions office, as an institution, to your prospective audience. Nothing matters more to them right now than how well you treat them, how well you translate your message to them about what the future is for them as students. Because right now their world is all up in the air as much as yours is, if not more, because their future depends on what you do. Or are they going to come? How welcoming are you going to be to them? How open is your campus right now? What are the options? How have you thought about the various options? Are potential roadblocks to their success in coming to the United States? And it's really interesting to take a look at this, and some of the other folks that have weighed in on this. The ISIF Monitor folks have an article about this IDP survey as well, and they put their own twist on the stories here. That the bottom line is from the IDP survey is that there is a strong preference to have still in face-to-face education. And if that means you're giving your students options, saying, hey, if you know for sure it's highly unlikely that they're going to be able to get their visas in time, there may be still quarantines in place by the time they might want to come in August or September, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, if you can't get here, we'll defer you automatically to the spring? If you want to, give them the options, and that's what students need right now. They need options so that they can take them home and weigh them and say, if you can get your visa in time and you can get to campus by our start of class, by our orientation, then yes, please, we want you to make it here, and we'll do everything we can to make you feel welcome. But if you don't know, or you're not going to be able to clear, you're not going to be able to get here. Here's option 2. You can take online classes in the fall and then join us in January when things have hopefully calmed down. You can get the visa and come. And we'll get you an updated I-20 so that you can apply for your visa at that time. But we will work with you no matter what. And here's what's going to happen on campus in XYZ in terms of the housing, in terms of residence life, in terms of activities. Here's what our expectation is and what we want you to expect of us as an institution. So the more you can get out in front of this, the more proactive you are with your prospective students, admitted students you're hoping to get here in the fall, the better your chances are of salvaging this class. Maybe not for the fall, maybe it'll be deferred to the spring, but you have that opportunity now based on how you act now and how you acted the last 3 weeks as well. But right now you need to be upfront with your students, your admitted students, and telling them this is what you're our first priority. We want you to be a future insert nickname here. But this is what you must be doing now, and getting them the answers, even though you might not know everything right now. You need to get out in front of this. And that's what they want to see. They want to see honesty. They want to see you making them feel like they're the most important person on earth right now. Otherwise, they're gone. And they're going somewhere else. They're going to another country. They're going somewhere where maybe they know they can get an in-person education in the fall. So that's what we have for today. I know it's a long and winding road we're all facing right now before we get to the fall, and there's a lot of miles to travel between now and then. But together, we can get there. And certainly any institutions that have questions on how we might be able to help shore up what you're already trying to do, and strategize as to where maybe you can be going more longer term, we're happy to be of service. So until then, we'll take our leave from you and wish you the best of luck and stay safe.